So I'm here today with Nik Peachey, who I've known for quite a long time and came across when I first was doing my MA. It was actually Russell Stannard who put your work in my notice first of all. So I've been a keen follower for a long time. But for those people who don't know you, Nik, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got where you are now?
Oh, well, it's a bit of a long story. I've been knocking around in ELT for over 30 years now, which seems staggering to me. Um, Originally, I was a music student. You might be able to see a bit of guitar hanging on the wall in the background. And I did some teaching, music teaching, while I was doing my degree, actually in a
Oh,
local prison. And
oh,
that kind
really?
of, yeah, not far from here. Interesting experience for another time, maybe. But that kind of got me into the idea of teaching. And when I finished my degree, to be honest, there isn't so much you can do with a degree in music. So I did a CELTA course, or what was then Cert TEFL, and
Mhm.
sort of with the intention of sort of spending a couple of years in Japan and saving up some money and doing a master's in composition. But
Oh,
no, but I went to Cairo to International House to do my certificate, and I just got hooked on it. I really enjoyed teaching. I really enjoyed being with people in the classroom. I sort of worked my way around, as many of us do, sort of different countries around the world.
which countries did you end up in?
So I did Egypt, and from Egypt I went to Ukraine, and
Oh,
then I was in Singapore for a while, Morocco, Spain, Italy, Morocco again, Manchester for a while. So I kind of knocked around quite a few places as a
nice.
teacher,
That's
and
great.
during that time, I sort of managed to acquire a daughter as well, which was
Mhm.
in Barcelona. And at the time, I just finished my diploma. I was doing CELTA training, and I wanted to sort of move on a bit. And one of the other CELTA trainers was doing masters in educational technology. And this was
Oh,
in about 98, 99, like back in the last
right.
century. And I was
Okay.
thinking, educational technology, what's that?
Yeah.
I just bought a computer, and so it seemed like a good idea. So I signed up for my
Oh.
master's with Manchester University and did a master's in educational technology in
So,
ELT, which I found really interesting, and
so
got hooked on
what
that.
was EdTech? I mean, that really is right at the beginning of things. I mean, I don't think I even had an email in oh, just about in 1998. So what did it look like? What
Well,
kind of technology were you
Well,
doing
there
studying?
was technology about before that as well. I mean, CAL, for example, which was the predecessor to EdTech, computer-assisted language learning technology, was around sort of back in the 60s, and people were using sort of computer programs and things like that. But it was when the internet kicked in that there was this big shift, and everybody wanted to know how do we use this? How do we use
Mhm.
websites with our students? And I mean, at that time, if you wanted to make a website, you had to learn HTML code. And, I
Yeah.
can remember sitting down for a couple of hours to make this web page that had a, a table in it with four squares, and there was a
Uh-huh.
picture of me in one and a text in the other. And it took a couple of hours to code this thing, and it
Yeah.
was just horrible. And
Oh.
I'd go to all these websites looking for information, and
Hmm.
it seemed like everyone was like this sort of catalogue of places you could go to look for information. But when you went to them, it was another catalogue of places for more
Right.
information.
Okay.
Finding content was actually still quite difficult then, because it was still
Right.
quite a skill to get anything online.
Okay.
But
Right.
that changed in sort of about 2004, 2005 with Web 2.0, and
Hmm.
with platforms like YouTube providing the platform, and you could just upload your own content, and blogging and things like that, which I got hooked on blogging for quite a long time, and still write a lot, and that really changed things. I think it sort of really gave people the power to self-publish, and which is kind of what I do now, which is sort of self-publishing books and selling books, and designing courses and things like that. That was a real transformation.
So tell me a bit about your blog, because that's actually how I first came across you, with your blog. I think because you've got two or three, haven't you? Or well, several, certainly
I've
different
been
ones.
through a few. The first one was a blog on educational technology, which I started in about, I think it was about 2007. And
Mm,
at the time, I'd been working for the British Council for a while on the teaching English site. I was the manager of the
mhm,
teaching English site. And when you work for the British Council, you have this kind of huge, status machine behind you, kind of helping you.
yeah.
You go to conferences and you're the guy from the British Council, and which is great. And then when I left to become freelance, there you realize that, well, actually none of this is yours. It's just you now. So you need to
Okay.
sort of build some kind of reputation for what you do. So I started doing the technology blog then, and that one and one on autonomous learning and digital literacy skills. So I started writing those then, and just publishing them for free. And that was how I kind of built my reputation and started getting training work and conference work and other writing work and things like that.
Mhm.
So
Did you find at that time, I mean, obviously going right back to the beginning of things, so did you find that teachers were skeptical or nervous? What kind of mood did you encounter with teachers?
I mean, I think there was a whole spectrum from, there are these people who are probably a bit too enthusiastic at one end of the spectrum, and are willing to use anything just because it's there. I'll do a blog with my students and thinking that, because it's a blog, that will be enough to sort of carry it, kind of thing. To the other end of the spectrum of people who kind of totally rejected it, thought it was a terrible idea, and but across that there were people sort of also, loads of people trying to and needing support and wanting to use it but not knowing how, and
Mhm.
people with sort of very basic skills worried about that their students had much better digital skills than they had and things like that. It's amazing how far we've come, and I think that's one thing that I've noticed with AI now is that, and I think it's probably due to the pandemic, is that there was a lot more rejection of technology before the pandemic than there is now. And people were sort of pushed to use Zoom, pushed to learn about these things, and all of a sudden they discovered that yes, they can work, and I can do this, I can develop those skills because I had to. And now with AI, people are jumping on board much, much, much more quickly and getting up I mean, it is easier to use, but they're getting up to speed much more quickly than ever before, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
And I
I
think
think
that's
I
really
think
changed.
I think that's certainly true. I think so. We talked about the positive things about ed tech and what people can use in the classroom. Do you see any disadvantages for using ed tech either in the classroom or outside it?
I mean, I think one of the big struggles, and that's something that I kind of really see in the thing over the years in the things that I've done, is that it's like building on quicksand a lot of the time. The rate of change is so rapid, and you learn these skills, and then you need to learn new skills, and then new skills, and then
Mm.
new tools, and the tools you were using last month have suddenly gone because they're no more economically viable, and or they've added AI to them or something like that. It is keeping up with the rate of change is really difficult. And for me, like going back to that blog that I published and started publishing in 2007, most of
Mm.
those articles are redundant now because the tools have gone, things have changed. It's kind of it makes a lot of what you do quite disposable.
I think
And
though, I
you,
mean, I hear what you're saying about learning the tools and things, but for me, if I look at something and I can't instinctively learn how to use it within a few
yeah,
minutes, honestly, I just give up.
yeah,
And I think probably I'm sure I'm not alone in this. Things have to be these days, I think, and usually are, to be honest, um, pretty intuitive and kind of work on the
yeah,
same sort of systems, don't they? Like, you'll have a bar across the top with drop down menus, or or
yeah.
something down the side that looks a bit like PowerPoint or whatever. There's something. I'm thinking about the things I use.
Yeah, I think that's true, and there are some things in some cases that are worth persevering with, but you've got to be sure that they're going to have multiple use. It's not just going to be a one-off thing. And the other
Yeah.
thing is, it, if it's something that students are going to use, you're going to have to be able to teach it to them as well. So if it's too complex for you, then it might be too complex for them too. So
That's
usability and simplicity is one of those really, really good things to look for.
I think, any talk about tech these days, it's come up a couple of times already, is incomplete without talking about AI. What
Mhm.
are your feelings about that as a positive force or negative
Well,
influence in
well,
education?
my feelings are quite warm and fuzzy, because it does a lot of work for me, and I put it to good work, and I think that's great, and I think there's loads of things that we can do, especially if we're learning how to prompt well and things like that. Some of the downsides are that it seems to be getting integrated into everything, regardless of whether it helps that. Like I mean, I write a newsletter and publish a newsletter, and I don't want AI to write it for me. I want to write it because it's your voice. I don't need AI to do my tweets for me. I don't need AI. There's loads of things like that it's pushing into and pushing the price up of,
Mm,
and things like that I don't really need. I can see that, as a teacher, there are lots of reasons to worry about students using it and using it to cheat. And how do you detect that? How do you make sure they're doing their own work? And
mm,
how do you instill in them the values that work, that the actual thinking work and putting the work in is the thing that has the value, not what you get
mm.
at the end of it. That the actual thinking work and putting the work in is the thing that has the value, not what you get at the end of it. I mean,
Okay.
I get it to do lots of bits of kind of donkey work for, or what I call
Mm,
donkey work for me, like
mm,
creating glossaries. It's great. I could
mhm.
spend, a couple of hours going through a document, writing up all the words and writing up the definitions, but it can do it in minutes. And, it's
Yeah,
for that, I think it's great, and it saves me a lot of
yeah,
work. But for
yeah.
other things, it, you know, for things where originality is needed, or
Mm,
original thought, original ideas, or real
mm,
kind of creativity, I think it still
mm,
struggles a bit. Although it can do some creative things very well, sort of coming up with images and producing images. I've
mm.
just written a book on AI generated images and how to generate images through AI, and it's been a marvelous thing to do, because it's been wonderful to create all these different images and of things that don't exist or couldn't exist, or that
Mm.
I'd spend hours and hours searching through
Looking
a,
for,
a stock
yeah,
photo site for, and
yeah,
never
yeah,
find. So that kind of thing I think is quite good. It's quite good.
yeah, yeah. And I think also for using text for language-based stuff, that text and
Yeah,
control practice exercises, that sort of thing. And again, it doesn't always get it right, but if you as a teacher with a critical eye can say,
yeah,
yeah, write me 15 questions because I want 8, and I'm going to
yeah,
choose the best 8 out of the 15 that you give me because I know that some of them are going to be rubbish. I think that's it's an awful lot easier than writing the 8 from scratch
yeah.
on your
Yeah,
own, I
and
think.
that's a great thing. The thing that kind of constantly worries me, though, is like, I can get it to write something for me, and I can look at it and think, oh well, that bit's pretty rubbish, and that's okay, and and you can develop it and things like that. But I can
Mm.
develop that because I've spent years and years doing writing work, and
Yeah,
I have I'd like to think I have the ability to sort of understand what is good writing and what is not. Whereas
yes.
our students, I think it's much more difficult for them to tell, well, is this
Mm.
good writing or is it not? And
Yeah,
and what's the difference, and why is one more valuable than
yeah.
others?
That's
Yeah,
perhaps what we need to be teaching is that
yeah,
criticality. I don't know if you can have it without actually having gone through the work yourself. I mean, all these are really huge
yeah.
educational questions, not for language teachers.
No, and in terms of training, you can get the AI to write a lesson plan for you, but how do you know? I've got loads of experience. I know if it's a good lesson plan or not. But as a trainee
Hmm.
teacher, how do you know whether that's, if
Hmm.
you're on your CELTA and you're getting AI to plan your
Hmm.
lessons for you, how do you know it's not? any good? How do you know
Mm.
what's good about it or why?
Yeah,
It's a tricky area.
it is tricky. It's interesting. Anyway, moving on. If you, because we could probably sit here and talk about this for quite a lot longer. If you had to choose two of your favorite tech tools, let's get a bit practical because people always like a bit of practicality. What are the two tools that you think that are currently available and useful and working and not too expensive that you would recommend to people?
At the moment, what I'm working with most, I guess, is ChatGPT. And I mean, I know there are lots of different AI tools around that can do specific different things for you, but it's sort of, in a way, ChatGPT is like a Swiss Army knife. If you really learn how to prompt, you can get it to do all those things for you. I'm not so keen on its production of images. For images at the moment, I'm really into Stable Diffusion. And again, there's a free version of that you can produce, 10 images a day on, I think. Or if I think I paid $10 for a month and got to be able to produce 2,000 images, and I can't think of anything to produce them all. I've got about 500 now, and I've got to use up another 1,500 before the end of the month to get my $10 worth.
I want a
But
unicorn with 6 horns
yeah, I'll get
leaping
that.
over a rainbow.
But I think that's a great one for producing visuals and flashcards and things like that, and really high quality visual images of really realistic people, things like that. So those are two that I'm using a lot at the moment. I'm using something called HeyGen quite a lot, which isn't free, but it produces kind of talking head video, which is kind of quite useful as well. There's all sort of things that I'm kind of integrating into my lessons and my lesson planning and things like that, materials development.
There's lots of things as well, aren't there? I know you use Genially a lot. In fact, I think it might have been you
Yeah,
who introduced me to Genially, and I use it a lot within my courses, and Canva too. Both those two things,
yeah,
mean that you can produce really professional looking, wonderful, lovely things
yeah,
very, very easily, really straightforwardly. So those are
yeah.
a couple of things as well that I really
Yeah.
like.
I use Genially for all my presentations whenever I'm doing
Mm,
conferences or anything like that because it's
mm,
it's very dynamic and it moves
mm,
nice and it can be interactive and you can
mm,
instantly share it with participants or anyone
mm,
who's
mm,
watching and so they can go back through it and interact with the different bits.
yeah.
It really adds another dimension to kind of
Mm.
presentations and materials.
Yeah, and things that I guess you could use in class too. You could use
Yeah.
this thing with
Yeah, I
sharing.
mean, all of the materials that I produce, all of my lesson plans have Genially materials, and they're this kind of interactive HTML5, and I can embed audio and video into them.
So tell us a bit more about your materials because I know your stuff and I really like your lesson plans in particular are so well put together and they look so nice and they work so well and such a nice flow through them and they're interesting. So having said all that about them, tell us something about your lesson
Well,
plans.
that's pretty much it, really. No, I mean, they're the kind of lessons plans and the kind of materials that I would have liked to have had when I was teaching. I don't do that much teaching anymore, but I mean, on the kind of, affective level, they're kind of based around sort of building knowledge and really interacting with students as though they're really human beings, not just sort of people we put chunks of language into, and sort of really drawing out their kind of opinions and their views and developing their views by sort of interacting with what sounds like real people and well, what is real people about kind of real issues and values and things like that. They're developed, as I said, using Genially with HTML5, so that I developed them with the idea of that they would be able to be used in the classroom or used online. That was mainly because before the pandemic, back in 2014, I was working for an online school, and we found it really difficult to find good lesson materials that would work in this kind of Zoom environment. And so I sort of developed them for to be good for online teaching and to be good for face-to-face teaching as well. They're all in color. I like to use lots of images. I like things to look really nice. You know, if you put something in front of your students, you don't want a shabby photocopy. You want something that looks really professional and as good, or at least as good as what, you know, a professional publisher would put out. So they've been developed to be that way. And you know, as they grew and there were more of them, I got people kind of emailing me saying, "Hey, I downloaded the PDF for the teachers bit, and I've lost it. I don't know where it's gone on my hard drive." So I developed an app that kind of contained all the material with some extra material. So there are lesson plans in there, resource books and teacher resource books that I've written about, you know, what I think about teaching and how it should be done, and sort of video tips and video lessons and infographic lessons. So, you know, and there's about, you know, between 300 and 400 lesson plans in there now, and ideas and activities and things like that. So I put these all together into an app that people can subscribe to either monthly or yearly, and you know, and that's the thing. One of the main things that I've been pushing over the last couple of years, I guess, is getting people to use those materials and to maybe kind of change the way they teach just a little bit, and think about teaching in a slightly different way, just in terms of, you know, how you interact, or what you're feeling about students is that, you know, they're not just, you know, you're not just programming in the present perfect, but you're developing a person and developing their views and their ability to think and express those views, you know.
I think if you've got, as a teacher, especially as a novice teacher, but even as a more experienced teacher, if you've got well-written materials, they do guide you into new ways of thinking about your teaching, I think, which it's
I mean,
nice way.
I've had great feedback from people who've used them, saying that, you know, students love them and it's changed the way they approach the lessons and things like that. But yeah, I've got quite a few of the subscribers are people who do teach, you know, independently online, and, you know, it provides them with a base of materials that, you know, look great and that they can start teaching with immediately. You know, there's business materials and sell materials and conversation materials, so lots of wide range of materials there, you know, and trying to push more in all the time.
Fantastic. Well, I'll put the link just below for the Teachers app, and also I think people can sign up on your site for your newsletter as well, because you put out a really useful newsletter pretty regularly. Well, thank you so much, Nik, for talking to me. It's been a pleasure as always, and really interesting to know a bit more about your very long history with this, which I hadn't quite realised, and all of the things that you've shared. So thank you.
Well, thanks.
If
Always
you
nice to have
haven't
a
had a
chat.
look at Nik's app yet, then definitely go and look at it, because it really is fabulous. And as you said, exactly the sort of thing that I would have wanted when I started out, or you know, even further down the line.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.